podcast.
Bring your friends!
All right, and we're live.
What a transition. It's on record.
Worst transition.
What a great
Worst
transition.
transition ever.
Oh, man. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a minute.
Yes.
It's been a minute. Eric, Rico here, and a very awesome guest today that Mr. Steve Joyner helped us to be able to get him in. A man that is pretty well known in the veteran community, as well as in many other communities, helping veterans and helping people with problems that they need. They need a lot of help. He received the CNN Heroes Award. Mr. Scott Silverman.
You want me to talk now?
We'll add the applause later.
I wasn't sure if there was a comma
Yeah.
there and you got to keep going. Well, anyway, it's nice to be here, guys. Thanks very much for having me on your show. And I look forward to whatever's about to unveil itself, because it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's
Well,
fun.
thanks for showing up and not running away. So we appreciate that.
Never do that.
Yeah.
Not
That's
at
good.
my age. I can't run. I shared with you earlier what I used to do all night. Now it takes all night to do. So if I'm going to run, I'm going to be on a little scooter or e-bike, and I want at least a day's head start so nobody can catch
You
me.
guys have those in Cali? The e-bikes, like everywhere?
Are you kidding? Everywhere.
Everywhere?
Everywhere.
Dude, we need to
Everywhere.
get those here in Springfield.
Oh
See,
yeah.
I remember they have them up in St. Louis. Remember we seen those?
Oh, yeah. The people just throw them everywhere and shit.
Yeah. See, I
Oh
thought
no, you talking like the bird and that kind of thing. I'm talking the e-bikes are a little bit different than the scooters. Oh yeah, scooters were everywhere. We had them also, people were dumping them everywhere. Then they started to, a couple people started having, head-on collisions on the boardwalk on the beach. Then they
wow.
them. But no, we have e-bikes, anything electric, California, they got people right now, snipers in buildings that they see you smoking a cigar, they'll just fire at you just because they want to know that.
that sounds like California.
Yeah.
More LA really, but
Oh, man. That's crazy, though. Do you like in Cali, or are you staying there because it's the best place? It's the best place that you can position yourself to help people, or why do you stay in Cali?
No, I was born and raised in San Diego, so I
Mm.
then conditioned my parole. I couldn't leave, and once that was up, I didn't want to. So no, I love San Diego. Well, San Diego's they call it America's finest city. My kids grew up there. My folks moved there in '49. So I don't think you can find a place that is as diverse as we are. We've got mountains, we've got ocean, we've got rivers and motorcycle trails and bike trails all within 30 minutes of each other. So you can do whatever you want outdoors, 65-degree mean temperature around year round. So it's a great quality of life. We have about 3.3 million people right now. So it's gotten bigger, obviously, than over the
San
years.
Diego?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Dude, I
there's
thought Puerto Rico was wild.
Yeah,
Because Puerto
it's
Rico 3.1.
roughly 1.3 million in the city and about 1.7 million in the county areas surrounding it. But San Diego, you can cross San Diego in 45 minutes, probably an hour and 20 minutes on an e-bike if you're going pretty quick. But so it's a great place to live, great place to raise a family, and of course it's a military town, so it's kind of an organic place for and it's been a test city for all kinds of different businesses over the last 50 years because of the diversity in our community, because of the military.
Is the population, does that include the homeless people too?
Well, it's interesting. Great question. You say that with a straight face. The homeless population, 50% of the homeless live in California, 50%. And yeah, it's hugely, and it's funny. I was a homeless provider for 18 years. So I watched it grow, and I had what's called an exit program. My job was to help people find jobs, get housing, and get out of the system. And it worked really well. So I know there's ways to fix it, but it seems like the leadership is having a hard time finding ways to do it. And, with the enabling that's going on right now. And, and now we've got some of the new migrants immigrants who have come in recently because of what's been happening, with the issues with the border, and they are now taking some of the shelter beds. So I'm waiting for the homeless to unionize and start suing the state. I mean, it's just a matter of time. It's gotten, because technically they're not taking but they're being given the beds because homeless don't want to go into shelters because they don't want the structure. They don't want the, they don't want to have to take all their stuff at night, keep it outside, have it stolen, and then go in at 6 at night and and then have to leave at 6 in the morning and have to kind of start all over. That's the way shelters are set up. You've got to leave and you've got to go look for a job, even though you might be inebriated or impaired from the night before. So not having that 24-hour support system is a real problem pretty much for anybody who's suffering from either self-medication, addiction, untreated trauma, mental health issues. So the way we're doing it, clearly it ain't working.
Do you think that in your experience, let me take this one.
Yeah.
Do you think that in your experience, because I was homeless for a little while when I was in Puerto Rico, because I was born and raised and educated in Puerto Rico. And I always tell the joke, like being, it's going to sound so bad, Scott, but I always have a joke that I tell that being homeless in Puerto Rico is like being middle class in America, except people treat you nicely. And one of the things that I saw and I'm seeing nowadays in town, because we're starting to have a big homelessness problems in Springfield, Missouri. There's a lot of people that want to be homeless by choice. Like they're like, listen, I can get a meal here, I can go here and sleep here, and I'm golden. Is that something that you've seen in your time and doing the things that you've done?
That's a tough one, and I'll tell you why. I've never met anybody, and when you look at my history, and the reason CNN picked me up was my work with the homeless, and this is back in 2008. I've never met anybody who said to me, Scott, sleeping in my own urine, drug seeking all day long, spending the night looking for cans to recycle, to buy the appropriate booze or drugs the next day that I need to kind of stay anesthetized to be able to live out in the street is really bitching. And I just really highly recommend it to anybody. I have not seen that. But to your point, there is a percentage who would prefer, I don't think they want to, but they would prefer to live like that than what they believe would be a major transformation to live in a structured environment where they're going to be told what to do. Look, I've been arguing for years trying to get stuck on stupid registered as a felony in California, because how do we get half the homeless in the country here? Well, and every time somebody opens up a new shelter and gets national media around it, imagine you're anywhere else in the country, okay, and you're a social worker and it's 10 degrees out and you've got 50 people you have to see that day, and you're asking yourself, what are you going to do? Well, put them on a Greyhound. go to San Diego, go to Los Angeles. Los Angeles has about a population about 7 million people. And Skid Row is what they're famous for having the largest homeless population. Over 50,000 men, women, and children,
wow,
supposedly, are in Skid Row any given day or night throughout the day or week. So that's a lot of people. And, and then they talk about how they're going to build housing for everyone. And it costs $1 million to buy land and build a studio apartment. How long you think it's going to take to build enough housing for 50,000 people? It's just
a long time.
It is insane. I will send you an interview that I did a couple of years ago. The business of homelessness and what unfortunately is being done, and billions is spent, and we don't get better at it. So, but let's go on to something that's more exciting. Like
no. The reason I asked that was because when you just had Larry Hankin on your show, correct? Did you hear me there?
Yeah, Larry Hankin.
Yeah, Larry. Have you interviewed Larry on your show?
I don't think so.
Podcast. Oh, dude,
he's different Larry.
Do you need to? You need to have Larry Hankin.
Yeah.
You need to. We need to talk to Steve.
Yeah.
Larry Hankin is he's been on Friends, he's been on Breaking Bad, but he has not. Dude, you're gonna love Larry. Larry's a very interesting person. We have him all the time. Like we're gonna have him here again recently. We try to have him once a month. And Larry, next 2 weeks, I think. No, next week. Next week. You're right. You're correct. I'm sorry. Okay. One of the things that Larry did was he had a skit
that he did on YouTube about homelessness and the problem. And one of the things that he said to me one time, he goes, when you're homeless, you have to worry about 3 things. You have to worry about where you sleep, what you get to eat, making sure nobody stabs you. And I was like, that sounds really shitty. And he goes, yeah, but when you're not homeless, you have to worry about the mortgage, the kids, paying the bills, the insurance, and this. And he went on a rant for like a minute. And I stood there and I was like, for a minute, I was like, yeah, fuck this. But again, it's just that's why I was asking those. I just wanted your opinion on that.
But I also, I've learned over the years, anecdotally and experientially, that when we talk about homeless, and they call it something else now, it's person without an address or something. You know, there's all these new definitions for what they want
residentially
to call it.
challenged, I think.
Yeah. So, but there are different levels of homelessness. I mean, you know, we had one of the largest veteran homeless population in San Diego, and finally, about 8 years ago, they started doing something about it, and the vet homeless population has started to decrease for the first time ever. So there are ways to help fix it. And, you know, I would be willing to bet that, you know, we have probably north of 7,000 homeless people, because we only have about 2,500 shelter beds. So that the other 4,000 or 5,000 every night have to find their way somewhere. You know, they have these counting times they do to allow you to submit to HUD to get reimbursed federally to help cover the overhead. I'd be willing to bet that half the homeless people, the people we call homeless today, disenfranchised communities, throwaways, whatever you want to call them, are able-bodied, and more than likely, given the right tools, the right support, we get jump-started and move into paths of self-sufficiency. Then we could take the rest of the resources that they're not using and really help those who are behind the 8 ball, you know, multiple mental health issues, fully deranged, largely impaired, have untreated trauma, highly addicted, mental health issues, co-occurring issues, and we could use that money to help put them into the right kind of support mechanism on a continuum of care. We actually have a thing, it's called Project 25. I was on the board years ago, and we did it for 3 years, and it worked. We had something that worked. It was a wraparound service, case management, and it worked. It wasn't a lot of people, but it was a pilot. And the hospital association in our community said, whatever money you help us save, meaning not having return visits to the ER, we will take that money and we will invest it in the program. So 18 months after the data came in, we showed that, you know, the 25 people, was actually 30, actually stayed inside, half got jobs, most got treatment, and it stuck. So we come back to them, and then we put a number together. It was roughly $1.5 million that was saved. And this was the 3rd year of the program. And I was actually on the executive committee at that point. I started as a volunteer, then got on the advisory, then became a board member, I got on the executive committee, and the guy that ran it's now assemblyman in California. The hospital association, the group that promised the money, came back and said, well, you know, we didn't really save the money. We just didn't really incur the cost. It's like, are you friggin' kidding me?
Okay.
That sounds like army talk.
Yeah.
You know, and it was
Change the wording. Yeah.
Well, so all of a sudden, everyone was waiting for this funding to come to extend the program another 3 years, and then really move it out and get other leveraged resources for it. But the program pretty much got shut down because, you know, there was a handful of people, and 2/3 of the work that was being done was not donated, but in kind from other providers.
Yeah.
So we were just the kind of the facilitators or the navigators to set the program up. So my point is this, and that model was studied, and according to HUD, according to the people that submitted the data, no one else has ever submitted a study before. So my point is, here's a program that worked, that was studied, that HUD looked at, agreed, and was never replicated anywhere else in the country. So go figure. It's kind of like, you know, the tobacco industry and what it took to fix that problem. And the same thing with prescription opioids, or what it took to fix that problem. And now we've got this morbidity rate with fentanyl, which is not made by licensed drug manufacturers. And we don't have the tools to fix it, because historically leadership, who's responsible, whatever that's defined as, doesn't have a baseline of what it takes to create systemic change to fix these kind of problems. Now, there is a model out there, though. COVID. Look what we did with COVID. And I use the euphemistic we. You could point the finger anywhere you want for that, but everyone got on it. And right now, you know, for example, I think I shared it before we started, the data that comes out around the overdose rate is 18 months old. You know, and with COVID, every day, every city, every county, every municipality that had some sort of deliverables going on, whether it be vaccinations or assessments or referrals to higher, you know, they had data and they reported it every day. So we knew every single day where people were expiring, where the hot spots were, where the federal government need to do some more underpinning, if you will, where medical doctors who wanted to volunteer could go and volunteer. We have nothing like that right now with the fentanyl and opioid crisis. And until we get our shit together, until we start figuring out how we're going to align with the national campaign, we're going to see more and more people. And we've seen it, you know, 600% increase in overdoses in our community in San Diego from 2 years ago, 600%. And we're a pretty progressive city. We're a border town, you know, right next to Mexico. And we've done pretty good, you know, fighting that war, if you will. But the overdose rate continues to grow because young people are taking this counterfeit medication and they're overdosing, unbeknownst to them that they're taking in poison.
Yeah.
That's wild to me that I didn't think about it like that. That during COVID there was daily numbers.
Yeah.
And we could do that. Yeah,
Well, but think about this, Rico. It was more than just numbers. It was like everybody, the mayors, the assistant mayors, the county supervisors, the legislative leaders, the medical association, the public health people, everybody was aligned and they all had information that was the same that they could, and they were meeting in crisis mode on a regular basis through Zoom, talking to each other. And you could, in each city or municipality had a mechanism to deal with the crisis. And whatever they needed, basically, if you will, the state or the feds found ways to underwrite that. And they moved these areas of expertise and resources to hotspots. And, so we know it can be done. And to me, that's a perfect model for what we need to do. And because it forces communities to talk to each other and it sits people down, and it actually removed, in some ways, initially it didn't, but it removed the politics. And it became about saving people's lives.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that analogy of utilizing that, not that standard, but that model to do it. Do you think that?
Well, everybody was on the same page, which made it, everybody was on the same page. So it made it easier to get things.
Everybody had a focus. This is why, like, in touching up on that, this is why one of the things that like really bother me with the whole veteran suicide thing is that, and I'll say this because I know you're a subject matter expert on this, is that I don't feel like we give a fuck enough about the whole veteran suicide because we're not taking a direct approach to it.
No.
And I come to find out a few weeks ago, which I'll have to find the article, that VA was skewing the numbers, saying, oh, it's 21, 22, when in reality, it was over 28% of veterans that were down. I think it was as far as 30-something%. Like, why do you think that we're taking an approach with certain things? Belay that. Why do you think that when it comes to dealing with veterans and stuff like that, that we don't take a more proactive approach? Because you have a lot of experience helping people. Especially,
and I've worked with a variety of different populations. I mean, when I started Confidential Recovery, which is the name of my treatment center, my first and focused goal was first responders, because they were an underserved group of people, and up to 25% of first responders suffer from some form of addiction, whether it's alcohol, prescribed medication, illicit drugs. Are harder to do because if they get tested, they lose. It's a career killer. And I've grown into the veteran population because it's so hard sometimes to get help. We take private insurance, but working with private insurance companies in some cases is even tougher. But it's interesting. Do you know the budget the VA has nationally? It's north of 260 billion. North.
what?
260
billion.
for the whole U.S.
Correct.
Billions with a capital B.
Yeah, or lowercase b, depending upon what part of the country you come from.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, billions, and
Billions.
and the thing is, it's the second largest line item on the federal budget. It's the second largest line item. And when you think about that, when people say, well, you know, we need more resources. Well, here's a very well enriched resource for the VA, which does all of the work supposedly with the veterans community. And you know, I just heard last year, 80% of the veterans, are you ready for this? 80% of the veterans who take their own life have not sought help.
Yep.
Have not sought help for one reason or another. And you know, I don't want to point the finger at the VA, because we work very closely with them in San Diego, and they refer, and we work closely with them. And you know, we're part of a network of 160 different nonprofits in our veteran coalition who do a myriad of services. And we're going to talk a little bit about our new nonprofit that we're launching. And the reason I'm launching it is because when you're a nonprofit, you tend to be able to get doors open differently than when you're a for-profit business. Go figure that out. So that being said, 80%, and they know this because they have history with, now this is within the VA, because if somebody expires and the VA has access to that person's record because they were part of that, you know, team, if you will, they can cross-reference and go, we never met Johnny. Johnny never sought services from us. And as a veteran, if they had any kind of benefits, if they were going to get help and didn't have an income, they could go to the VA. But they weren't in the system. So that's how they put that data together. So it's pretty accurate from what I'm being told. And I heard it from a high-level politician who's a veteran, who said this just shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be. And you know, the VA, as you know, over the years have had a lot of controversial media around it. But you know, and people ask me, what do I think the issue is? And what I've heard from the experts is because the VA is run by doctors and people who are in the hospital business. And I know a lot of people claim that doctors shouldn't run the business. Doctors should do what doctors do best.
Yeah, I get that. I did have I do know that VA, it all depends on which VA you go to. We've had here in or up in Columbia, when I was going up there, we had people coming from Kentucky.
Yep.
To go to the VA in Columbia.
Springfield does extremely well.
Springfield as well.
Like I've been in the system for years, and I refused to get help in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
And to touch upon what you said earlier, where veterans don't want to get help, I'd like to see a study, because I have a theory that one of the main issues why a lot of veterans don't go get VA help is because, number one, they listen to what they see in the media when they don't understand that it's like Eric said, it's certain places.
Yeah.
Certain places. Because I tell you what, I call VA right now and I can get an appointment in less than 2 weeks. 100%. But the thing is also is that there's a lot of veterans that refuse to get help because they have this mentality of, and again, this isn't everybody. I know for a fact there's veterans that have tried to go get help at VA and it's like, oh, 6 months down the road, right? But I know a shit ton of veterans that I've talked to over the past 8 years that you'll tell them Purple Heart. I'm talking about Purple Heart recipients. I'm talking about fucking Bronze Star, Silver Star recipients that they go, oh, I'll be all right. I just need to not be a little bitch. They have that old school mentality of the military of like, no, just suck it up and you know, drink water and ibuprofen. And I don't think that that's something that people really talk about a lot, because it is a mindset that a lot of old school guys have. I mean, you were like that for a little while. I don't mean to throw you under the bus, but you were like that for a little while.
No, it's drilled into you.
It is. And
you
I think
you're not injured. You're not you don't know, mentally can't handle it, because that it directly affects your evals, your performance, or anything else. Even a leadership position, you wouldn't, because it's like, oh, he's got some mental issues, or he's got trouble at home, or
Mhm.
this or that. So it curtails your upward mobility.
Right.
It shouldn't, in certain instances, I could see where it would interfere with your job, like excess drinking or something like that. But
Well, and that's part of the
they
stigma.
taught us how
Unfortunately.
to excess drink responsibly when I was
Right.
there, and I think they got rid of that program. But it was really helpful. I mean,
Well,
you found exactly what your limits was.
Go ahead, Scott.
I'll give you an example. And here in San Diego, according to the experts, 375,000 veterans. Okay. And half of them are not insured. Half of them are not insured.
Oh,
So
yeah.
to your point about the ethos with the veteran, I'm not going to go get help, or I don't want to get help, or I'm not going to get the kind of help I want, or I'm afraid to get help, or if I raise my hand, then people will think I'm weak. And that's part of that stigma. So the reason that we're opening up, I'm going to jump there now. The reason that we're opening up the Veterans Navigation Center, we call it the VNC, is we want to be a concierge to veterans and help them move through the next steps, whatever that might be defined as. Work with our partners in the community, help them navigate the VA, and make it easy for them. Because if the federal government's spending $260 billion a year of taxpayer money to help the vets, you got to believe there's a lot of vets getting help, and there's a lot of places where vets can get help, but they need help learning how to get help, or even ask for help, if you will.
There it is.
There it is
right there.
too.
There. I love what you said right there. You got to learn how to fucking ask for help. And I'm
And
sorry.
you can't learn how to do that. Let me tell you, the three of the hardest words to say out loud, in my opinion, in the English language, and it's in my book, is I need help. And I've seen it in recovery, and I saw it with the first responders. They're even worse. I've heard, I can't tell you how many hundreds of first responders I've heard say to me, I would rather eat my gun than ask for help.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, the other problem is that even when you do ask for help, only certain people know where to go. Like and me particularly, I didn't know that there are other resources I had. And I would ask, and they're like, well, we're not sure. We can get back to you, or some bullshit answer, and then you never hear from them again. So
right. And that's what we're going to fix. We're going to find a way to fix that on a micro scale, and a pilot program that we're putting together with Confidential Recovery. So when people go through treatment, veterans, and any treatment or any medical support you get, there's a sunset to it because the benefits run out, which isn't really true with the VA. Technically, if you've got a diagnosis that supports long-term care, you're going to get it from the VA. But if you're not in the funnel, if you don't walk up those stairs, or you don't know which stairs to walk up, or you don't even know that there's stairs you need to walk up, you will not get started on that path. So that's what we're going to do with our nonprofit, is be able to, I like the concierge service, because, when you think about a concierge, when you go to let's say a hotel, that concierge has 12 different books on everything you'd ever want to do in that community and can direct you. And that's what we're going to build in the next 6 months, is that info package. So we have the information with our partners in the community, with the VA, and try to find a way to set up a model that we think other communities will just go. Because to me, helping people really isn't that hard, as long as you're willing to make the commitment to help people and you understand what that really means. And people who have served understand that. So you have to find a way to, kind of speak their language. We have 6 of our graduates that I just personally met with last week, who have over a year of recovery, and they all want to be these concierges. So we're going to bring in some experts. We're going to train them. And the cool thing is, you don't have to be a clinician for this part of it. All you have to have is lived experience, because that's the new buzzword in the grants, is we want you to hire people with lived experience. And the reason they're saying that is because the trained professionals haven't been able to do it, because
Yeah.
they don't engage. And, doctors who see 100 patients a day, they don't have time to build a relationship. So it's got to be done somewhere else so someone can kind of help you. And then that that you can call on them, kind of like a sponsor in recovery, or a big brother, or a big
Oh,
sister, or an advocate, or just a friend who
Well,
understands.
what have you? I've noticed a lot of changes since I've been out, because I retired in 2010, and VA has changed quite a bit since I retired. But what changes have you seen that work in there?
Well, I think it was Trump that actually created, what was it, the choice program, and really pushed it hard, where vets were told, hey, look, if you don't want to go to the VA, okay, we get it. If you don't want to see a specialist over here, that's fine. You get a choice now. And by the way, when I talk about my area of expertise, it's more around the behavioral health and the SUD, substance use disorder. I mean, if you have a broken arm, or you need a heart transplant or a kidney transplant, or you've got cancer, it seems with a medical problem, you can get the kind of service that's different. But when it comes to something that's opaque, like, why aren't you leaving the house? Why are you drinking yourself to death? Why are you self-medicating? Instead of asking why, you talk about, would there be something that I could do to help support you if you feel like that's not working for you? So, and so for me, the changes that I've seen is kind of how we're talking to the customer. I mean, I worked with ex-offenders, I worked with homeless people, and now working with veterans, there's a commonality of what I call institutionalization that is taught, in the armed forces. When you're in the military, there's a structure you learn. There's footprints in the sand. There's SOP manuals. Same thing in jail. Same thing in the homeless arena, in the social service arena. The problem in the social service arena, there's no connectivity, and I think there's a silo problem with the VA. And to your point, when you hear about a VA that you mentioned, and other vets will drive a long way to get there, it's because they can. But if they didn't know it was there, and usually it's a veteran who's probably telling about it. That's why we want to build our workforce with people with lived experience. I mean, we'll have a therapist who's around to handle the crisis calls, but we'll be referring those more than likely back to the VA. But once we think our path carved out, we're going to see people get into the VA in a much easier way. Not that we're trying to circumvent what they already do, but we want to try to fast track based on what we know, and then become that person's advocate until that person says, look, I no longer want or need you in my life. And we say, look, if that's your position, take a month, see how it goes, but know that you're still tethered. You're in our database. You've got our phone number. Don't just walk away. Try it out. See what you've learned with your tools, but also balance that line with doing it for them, but more importantly, doing it with them.
The other issue is that we've noticed, and Jesus Christ, for the people watching on Patreon, I apologize for the camera. We're in the process of buying a better one that is not going to be doing this as much. Oh my God, that's so horrible.
If you've been drinking, it's probably in focus right
yeah,
now.
if you're drinking while watching this, you are 100% good.
fine.
We've
Well,
never had
they don't even know it's out of focus.
they don't.
That's true. That's true. That's
Don't bring it up and make them face it. That'd be another issue we gotta do.
One of the things also that I've come to see over the years with VA is that a lot of people have, hold on a sec, this is gonna bother the crap out of me. A lot of people really don't understand their benefits, right? And there's a lot of misconceptions and myths about like if you're 100% disabled, right?
Yeah.
There's 3 ratings of 100%. You have 100% regular, 100% PT, and 100% SSI. And one of the things that I see a hard lack of education and a huge issue is when guys get out or gals get out, everybody fucking ignores you. And I've seen this happen thousands of times.
Yeah.
Once people retire, nobody gives a fuck. And what you said earlier is 100. It's so fucking true.
Mhm.
And everything you've said so far, I've seen or lived through. And one of the things that I've seen the most is you got to speak their language. For example,
Yeah.
what helped me a lot was jujitsu. And I understand the story that a million people have heard or whatever the fuck. But what helped me was jujitsu because it gave me the structure and it gave me the outlet for me to be able to get rid of whatever's in my head.
Mhm.
But people complain a lot of times that there's a lot of organizations that help veterans. Like
Mhm.
I don't think there's enough. Because you might be able to offer a service in a certain way that someone likes or not likes, belay that,
Prefers.
and it prefers or that resonates with them, right?
Mhm.
But for example, for me, a big organization that helped me was We Defy Foundation. And one of the things that they did was like, dude, like through jujitsu, they can help and whatever. But
Mhm.
then you have other organizations that they have a different way of doing things. And then uh you have obviously there's always a bad apple, but how how is it that your organization, what kind of language will your new organization speak to help the veterans? And I think
Mhm.
that's the question that I like to ask because that way it'll get people to go to you specifically.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, I think the simple answer to that is we're going to speak their language. And then what we're going to do to build a relationship and create the level of trust that's needed. And ultimately, by having these other 160 partners, and look, when we just launched our website Monday, and some of these partners are going to go, this is awesome, because there aren't a lot of people providing treatment for veterans, because historically the VA is doing it. By the way, I want to make sure, I want to give a strong positive note to the VA. Everything I've heard is the VA is never going away ever.
Mhm.
You can't say that about Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna, Signal, Anthem. They're
Yeah.
changing the way they reimburse and the way doctors do business, and the AMA does business, and Medi-Cal and Medicare. Those things are always shifting and they're always up for some sort of negotiation. But when it comes to the VA, the good news is that $260 billion, I understand, is automatically raised every year. So if you think about, going from here to Armageddon, that is going to be in place. So if we can
Mhm.
find ways to help build those bridges and make it easy for people to get the resources, because I don't want to do what the VA does. I'll never be able to do that. They're the VA.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if we can help people navigate, hence the name, Veterans Navigation Center, we've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and we're not going to do 90% of what a veteran probably needs in that component of it, but we're going to find our partners that do. We're bringing in music therapy, we're bringing in people reading poetry, we're bringing people in
Mhm.
who have experience as veterans who have struggled, like you've mentioned, Richard, and had difficulty navigating, to build that level of trust that one needs. And we also do telehealth. So if somebody says, well, I don't want to drive down there, okay, get on Zoom. And what we do, which is kind of unique, is we don't just Zoom with the vet one-on-one, we actually bring them into the room that the group's got. And in that group are a series of people at different levels of recovery who
Mhm.
can share their experience of strength and hope with the guests. And the guests can come in, I call them a customer sometimes, and they don't have to put their name up. They can keep the camera off. They can do it with total anonymity, and they can listen to other veterans talk about exactly what they did. And if it resonates with them, they can call back. But we're not going to wait for them to call back, because part of what we're going to do is we're going to get their name and number, and we're
Mhm.
going to call Johnny in a couple of days and go, wasn't that awesome? It sounded like, Jim and Mark and even Karen shared something you shared with us.
Mhm.
What do you think about coming and talking with one of them? Or
Let
get
me
on the
let me
phone or go Zoom and then engage them.
let me pause you
Mhm.
right there, Scott, because something you said, I think you're incorrect on it. I don't think that each person provides maybe not even what a quarter, like you said, sometimes we won't provide even 90% of what they need.
Mhm.
I disagree. Because I've been with people that I felt like I couldn't even provide. And I'm getting emotional. I'm trying not to. Man, it takes so little to fucking help someone, dude.
Yeah.
Like it really does. And what you're doing like fucking resonates with me because
Mhm.
Don't ever think that you're not doing 90%, dude. Because that 10% that you think you're giving,
It's a lot more than you realize.
might pull someone.
Well, let me be
from
clear
eating
to
a
make sure
bullet,
that
yeah.
that I made myself clear. What I mean by that is the 90% of the services that are out there, we're going to help connect them. That's what I mean by that. That
Okay.
meaning, for example, so if you do an equestrian class, if you do pool therapy, if you do qigong, if you do jujitsu, if you do yoga, if you do melodic hikes in the mountains, and somebody wants to do it, we're going to connect them to those other providers. What I mean is, meaning we're not going to try to be everything to everybody, because I don't think that works. I think you do what you do best, and then what you do is you hand off a soft handoff. But if you called us and we take your name and we say, hey, how can we make your day better? That initial phone contact makes you our customer. And no matter where we refer you, whether you like it or not, if you don't respond, we're going to hunt your ass down with love in our heart and make sure you got to where you wanted to go. That's what I mean by that. I'm talking about there's 160 different veteran services in San Diego, not even including the VA. It's called the Veteran Coalition. And they all have, whether it's working with, animals or working with, learning how to grow a garden. If that particular person is looking for some skill, support, or a system that is out there, we want to have a database of it. We're going to make that referral, but we're going to hold their hand through the process. That's what I meant by that.
Now, I was just wondering, there's other, like you said, other VA, other organizations that helps VA, because there's a bunch of them. You got the BFW, the DMB, the was it the AFF something? Too many to name. Do you guys coordinate with them, or you work with them at all, or how's that?
Our goal is to work with everybody who serves vets. So what we're doing is, most of them have kind of worked on their own, and if they have, we're going to try to connect with them, and we're going to work through our workforce partnership on the employment side. We're going to work with domestic violence counselors to help with relationship reconciliation. If you're suffering from, you can't sleep, or you can't, or you go to sleep and you can't wake up, it doesn't really matter. Whatever's going on, we're going to do everything we can to try to get you to that person. But there isn't, from what we're told in our community, there isn't one group that does that. There are crisis centers that take phone calls. But there isn't a centralized group that focuses on helping them navigate. And I don't mean, here's a sheet, we'll fax to you, or we'll email you or text you. Good luck. We're talking about taking the sheet, giving them a review over it, but staying with them. Now, we have no idea what the demand's going to look like. Obviously it's going to take us time to ramp up. If we go from 0 calls to 50 calls an hour, obviously, we're going to have to make some adjustments. But our goal is to get to a point where we work with all the VVSWs, we work with Vietnam Vets of San Diego, we work with Stand Down, and then we work with other treatment centers that might be appropriate for someone to go get a detox. If there's a wait list at VA, or if there's a crisis going on, we can help make that referral and make sure that they know that we're not just making a referral, we're making you part of our infrastructure, and we're part of yours, whether you like it or not. And hopefully they'll like it.
And what's the name of this, and when is it starting, and what's your website?
Well, it's called the Veterans Network Center, Veterans Network Navigation Center, Veterans Navigation Center. And and we're going to create that network with all the different providers. And we've been subtly and softly, talking to everybody in the community. But, a lot of them are independent. Look, most nonprofits I know, I ran one, their job is to make payroll this Friday. You know what I mean? They're struggling as well. And we're not looking to take resources from them, but we're hoping we can bring resources and focus on what we're doing. And we only, unfortunately, we can only do this right now in San Diego till we get the pilot up. And then hopefully what we'll do is we'll create some training manuals, and then we'll start to share it with other groups throughout and then look, telehealth is awesome, because, for example, in San Diego, we have veterans that may be 60 miles, 70 miles away, and they physically can't get to treatment. And what we want to do with them is get them a chance to get online and make that connectivity with us, so we can help them. There might be something in their own backyard they don't even know about. But if nothing else, we can provide that SUD, substance use disorder treatment, virtually. Because if you're under the influence of something, if you're self-medicating, if you're suffering from addiction or you're drinking too much and you don't want to leave the house, we're not going to motivate you with a phone call. But if we can get you engaged in a group and we can jumpstart it, and then, because you can't even help somebody with mental health issues who's under the influence. That's got to be eradicated first before you can start to do a deep dive with people that are suffering from co-occurring issues. And that's just the fact of the science.
Yeah, self-medication is defeats your mental.
Can I ask you a question, Scott? And it might be kind of personal. If you don't want to answer it, I totally respect that. Why do you think that so many people that, and not just veterans, right? Because I've worked with domestic violence victims, I've worked with trafficking victims, I've worked with everything. I can never understand why is it that it takes them countless times to be able to just accept that there's a problem. For example, domestic violence victims, statistically speaking, it takes more than three issues or instances or circumstances for them to go get help. With veterans, it's always seems like we dive right into alcohol, or we dive right into what I call risky or problematic behavior.
Yeah.
Why do you think that it takes so many fucking tries?
Well, let me give you an example. When I talk about addiction, the example I like to give is it's like diabetes. Nobody wakes up one morning and says, hey, mom, dad, can I get diabetes for the rest of my life? Hey, I'd love to have an addiction of something mood altering. So if they're suffering from the addiction is, the inability to feel feelings. It's a disease of denial. Okay. And there's the stigma behind it. So if you take those three factors, and the three skills that I believe somebody who's self-medicating has, and it's consistent, I've seen it tens of thousands of times, they know how to lie, cheat, and manipulate. So if they're lying and cheating and manipulating because they're trying to hide what's going on with them, and it's a shame-based issue, there's no way they're going to look in the mirror and they're going to go, hey, you've got a problem and you better do something about it. I'll give you an example. Somebody calls me and says, I have a problem. Okay. But I don't want to pay for it. I want my insurance to pay for it. I said, well, your insurance might have a copay. I don't want to make a copay because I really don't think I have a bad problem. So 1 second, you just told me you got your 4th DUI. You've lost your 2nd relationship. You just lost your home, and you have $500,000 in gambling debt. You're right. You have full control of all of your facilities right now. And you don't, and then they say, well, I don't even have time to come to treatment. I said, it's 9 hours a week. How many hours a day are you under the influence right now? How many hours a day are you impaired from being under the influence? And if you take 10% of that and you put it towards a pivot and a transformational path of change, what would happen if you got better, felt better, and you were better? And this negative outcome from what you're suffering from, you can shift the paradigm. What would that look like?
Yeah.
But the timing is important. People call me all the time under the influence, and I go, look, I really appreciate calling, but can we talk tomorrow? Oh, are you busy? And I'm not busy, but I can't talk to somebody when they're under the influence because nothing's going to sink in and they're going to get more defensive. And then it's going to be my fault that I wouldn't listen to them. But I try to be careful about it, and I give my number out. By the way, I'm going to do it right now. It's 619-993-2738. 619-993-2738. And I dare you to call me. I dare you to call me or text me or just Google me, Scott H. Silverman. You'll find me. I don't care where you are in the country. I'll take your call. We'll chat about it. We'll figure out what next steps look like. Because I assure you, there are resources in your community or at least nearby that you can access, but you have to be willing to initiate some of that. Because if you don't do it and other family members have tried for you, they're going to give up because they figured you don't want it.
Yeah, I'll text you, but because I'm shy. But
that's okay. We have a hotline for that. It's 1-800-WHAM-WHAM. You call that
Okay.
1-800-WHAM-WHAM. You call that
I have
hotline.
that on. Yeah, I had that on
And they will
speed
help.
dial actually. So
Yeah.
Scott, everything that you're saying, it comes from experience.
mhm.
How did you manage your own struggles?
Well, when I when I tried to take my own life and failed, it was a real big motivator.
Mm.
I got lucky. I mean, I was getting ready to jump out of a window on a 44th floor in New York City on my worst week of drinking back in '84, and divine intervention. And in my head, because I remember my mom, I was one of those kids that grown up and I'm just going to kill myself. And my mom told me once, she says, suicide is selfish, son. What are we all going to do if you leave us? I said, sleep better, not have to go down to the police station.
You said that to your mother?
Yeah, we had open conversations only when I was high. And I was poly drug, and I'm also a retired unlicensed pharmacist. So I kind of get the modality of what's happening today and they're my competition today. People making drugs, selling drugs, they're my competitor. But I understand how they think, and I understand what motivates them. And I even understand more the consumer and what they're trying to do to not feel those feelings. And it's hard sometimes if yoga doesn't work or jujitsu doesn't work, or you didn't even think about trying those things.
Yeah.
And I always believe there's hope and help. And I'm so tired of going to funerals. So I crashed and burned. I went to treatment. I sought help. I became a volunteer at my treatment center. I've been into helping people business, as a volunteer for like 25 years. And I got into it, became professional with it, and I still, I work about 60 hours a week, and I probably volunteer another 40. Because there are a lot of people that don't, by the time they call me as a crisis coach, they don't have a whole lot left. No family, no car, no job, no house, and when I get phone calls from homeless people, I'm living in my car, because the old days it used to be, if you still have a car, you're not really ready for treatment. You've got a watch, go sell that watch first. And when after you've sold the watch, then we'll know you're motivated to come in for treatment. And treatment for the disease of addiction, okay, that maladaptive behavior is the only behavior that the medical world sometimes continues to say you're not ready or you're not motivated. That doesn't happen with any other medical issue, but when it comes to substance abuse, it happens all the time. And a lot of it's just the stigma, especially people who still have a job or maybe still have a salary or still have a car, or or they're running a company, or they believe that, hey, just because 2 families have left me and I don't have a driver's license anymore, I'm still going to work. Really, where do you work? Well, I can't really remember, but each morning I wake up, it's written down somewhere. I go there. Oh my God, you're right. You are totally in control.
Yeah.
No judgment.
That's true. They don't do that with cancer patients. It's like,
Nope.
well, you're not ready for treatment yet. So
How do you navigate with you said a few minutes ago you understand how to navigate pharmaceuticals. Can you elaborate on that?
And wait, navigate as far as
Dealing, like, you understand.
Oh, well, as a retired unlicensed pharmacist, did you know what I meant when I said that?
Yes, I understand. So my question would be, how do you speak their language in order to be able to understand, like, okay, this is what needs to be done, but hey, I also understand that in the pharmaceutical world, this is what needs to be done. How do you navigate those two worlds? Because I've very rare people that I've met that understand those both worlds.
Yeah.
Well, as a prior drug distributor, I understand what that meant. And as an addict in recovery, I understand recovery. So what I'm saying is I understand the business that some of these people, for example, fentanyl, it's a poison. 9 out of 10 people that are taking fentanyl don't even know they're taking it. And it could be a dose that could kill them. So you ask the question, or the question begs, why would someone make a product that kills their consumer?
Yeah.
Okay. Why would the Mexican cartel make a product that's laced with fentanyl now? And you've heard about the Skittles, the colored fentanyl coming out. Why would they be making that? Or, whether it's them or China, or why would people do it in their garage? Because you can make it yourself. why would they make something that could kill their consumer? And the answer that I've heard, and I've heard it probably 100 times, is every time somebody overdoses and dies, it hits the news, and that helps their business. That helps their
Wow.
business.
'Cause
Advertising.
you're killing
Yeah.
but you're killing your consumers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you get another 1,000 people hearing the news, you get another 100 consumers, you're building your business. I don't think it's part of their business model. I just think it's an outcome from how unfortunately it works. Now, we are also in the US, I believe, a medication-oriented society. Was it up to 25% of our youth are on some form of medication, whether it's
Yeah.
Adderall or some kind of, antidepressant or anti-anxiety medicine or a sleep medication. Kids, 25%. So that's kind of how we've been treating things. And we are a society that I believe, and I've heard, and science says, doesn't want to feel our feelings. If we feel sad, we want to fix it. If we feel down, we want to feel better. If we can't sleep, we want to take something to go to sleep. And if we have trouble waking up, we want to take something to wake up. And, alcohol, which is legal, is still one of the most largest consumed mood altering substances on the planet. And there's nothing wrong with people who drink, and there's nothing wrong with people who smoke marijuana. But if you're abusing it and it's impacting your life and it's potentially killing you, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Do you think that one of the reasons why I believe firmly that one of the reasons as to why are you having issues there?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that one of the reasons why we're so quick to hit up a pharmaceutical solution is because people don't want to sit down and try to be able to just look at a smaller solution. For example, work out every day, have a routine. Hey, drink water. I forgot you told me this the other day. It was like 60 something percent. It's over like 50%, I think, of people are like just dehydrated.
Yeah.
And it's like, dehydration can kill you.
It can kill you.
It's like one of the reasons that you can die, right? Why is it that we're not looking at, smaller solutions and then scale up? We are just immediately going to, oh, you need this combination of this cocktail, of pills.
I think it's part of human nature, unfortunately. I don't have an easy answer for that. And if I did, I would wonder why we haven't worked harder to give everyone that we could the tools to be able to make those informed decisions, to be able, look, everyone says you need at least 64 ounces of water every day. The body's 70% water. Why aren't we doing that? I mean, I just think that, look, why am I not at my ideal body weight? Why is my hair thinning? And, over time, those things happen through gravity and age. But there are certain things that we can influence. And I think that's part of where the education comes in. And, it's interesting, an expert, I call him an expert, a psychiatrist, addiction specialist. He told me he traveled the world for 2 years working for the United Nations, trying to help look at and study the standardization of treatment. And one of the outcomes that he's always talked about is, he said, one of the things that works the best is for families to sit down 3 nights a week and just put their phones down and talk to each other.
Really?
And more important, listen to each other.
So like dinner.
Well,
they used to go and have dinner. Growing up, we always had dinner at the table. And that's when we talked.
But it's interesting he says that, because like one of the things, I have a friend who's a marriage counselor. Like she's been doing this for like 40 years. Like she's up there in age, but she's been doing, and one of the things that she says that in her 4 years of experience is couples, right? I'm talking about couples, not families. Couples who hang out for at least an hour a day have a slightly bigger chance of not getting divorced and being able to communicate more effectively and are happier. why is that not something that we're trying to normalize? Is what kills me. And I know
Well,
you probably don't have an answer.
and who would take the lead to get that information out there? You know, it used to be faith-based leaders. It used to be your neighbors. You'd get together for barbecues or whatever it is you did. I'm going to tell you an interesting story I heard about 12 years ago, 14 years ago now. You've heard this, the term choir practice for law enforcement. Choir practice. It's when you might be too young, but it's when cops, law enforcement, first responders would get together at the end of the day and go to the bar.
Yep. We used to do that when I was an MP.
Okay. And they called it choir practice. And there was a time when law enforcement shifted their work shift from an 8-hour day, 5 days a week, to a 4-day week, 10 hours a day. And I don't think this has actually ever been studied, but it was anecdotal from somebody who was in law enforcement, who came to therapists and did their own study. They said that when men and women would finish their workday, they would go to the bar. Yes, they would probably drink more than they would normally, but they would dump their day with their colleagues. So when they went home, their decompression was already underway. And even though they might be a little lit up, they could spend time with their family and not have to worry and process some of the things that happened during their day that they saw and experienced. So when you think about that, to your point, the average person who maybe had, let's say, 60% capacity emotionally to deal with a variety of different things, in the last just 10 years, social media has probably sucked up half of that.
Yeah.
And then when you think about the 30% that's left, if you don't have the tools on how to sit down and parents ask me all the time, what do I tell them? I said, well, try this. Try shutting up and listening.
Yeah.
Wait,
yeah.
what?
100%. Yeah.
Well, listen to your child. Well, yeah, but I don't want them to do different things. I said, well, how's that working? well, it's not. You know, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth. So I really encourage families, which is that sit down and dinner thing. It doesn't have to be dinner. It could be a walk on a weekend. It could be a breakfast. It could be a prayer meeting or a meditation time or jujitsu or some sport or a walk.
Yeah.
Or anything. It doesn't matter. Tennis, golf, whatever you need or want to do. And I see it with my family. We sit down to dinner. We don't get together because my daughter's in New York and the other one works a lot, and my wife does too. And I said, could we take a half an hour and everybody just set your phone down? And it's funny watching their faces, like, well, you're okay. Just to, and the internet addiction is rampant, and it's not even talked about with young people. And according to studies, which we'll see because they're underway now, with the pandemic, with kids that were prevented from going to school, they were at home on the internet. And that's why I think we're seeing this huge explosion of acting out and inappropriate activity. I just read there was a report 2 weeks ago, 97% of America suffers from some mental health issue. 97%.
Yep.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that high.
No. It was on the UN had something on their website, I believe, and also who else was it? I know what he's talking about. Jesus.
And what I'm hoping to do? I want to meet the 3%, see what the hell they're doing, because I don't.
Bro, how are you raw dogging life, right?
You know what? Tell me what you're doing. Let's bottle that.
Dude, how are you raw dogging life and not doing so? It's so funny you say that. I had a psychology professor back in Puerto Rico, and I can't remember his fucking name now. And he was a big Frodonian guy. And one of the things that he said is, I don't trust people who don't drink, don't smoke, don't do some sort of drug, or don't fuck a lot. And I was like, why? And he goes, how are you raw dogging life without having some sort of coping mechanism? And I was like, I don't think those are coping mechanisms. Yeah, like an out. But it's so crazy. 3%.
Yeah. And that could be that could be
a lot of screwing.
Well, that could be the error of the study too, that 2 or 3 point error. But it's fascinating that someone, I have not seen the study, and I'm looking forward to getting a hold of it, because how does someone make that kind of assessment and then put a label on it and then publish it? And if it's true, gee whiz, it kind of answers all your, every time you've asked me why, Well, there you go. I mean, if we can't, you know, the analogy I give when people ask me, why do you think kids are taking medication that they know could kill them and not having any, you know, kind of, you know, door closing on that? And I said, look, I've never met anybody who would be willing to drive 65, 70 miles an hour in pouring rain with their headlights off. So we know that the average person's got the mindset to make a common sense evaluation of what something might be that's unsafe.
Yeah.
But why does it happen? And you know what's interesting? I just heard, can you imagine going on a long trip in a motorhome with me with the kind of information I have? It could get very depressing. But I try to lay it out in an upbeat way that for every person who overdoses and dies, 14 people overdosed and got it reversed. So when someone said to me, are things getting better? Well, that's a significant change.
Yeah.
But of the 14 people that have an overdose that's reversed, how many are getting access to help and treatment? How many are actually seeking it? And how many realize they may have just lost their life, but they have a second chance? So I don't know that part of it yet. But the way we're going to fix this, in my opinion, is have the conversations openly and honestly like this, empower families. And we, in my opinion, we've got to put people who understand this in the schools, not teach the teacher. The teachers are overwhelmed, but get expertise in the school and have it funded in a way where there's somebody. And when I went to high school, there was a guy, his name was Mr. Foote. I don't think he's still alive. He was considered the drug counselor in a high school with, we had almost 800 kids, I think. And I used to visit him all the time because I was loaded. I wanted to know what he knew so I could avoid getting arrested. And he was a very, very informative guy. So we need to have someone like that who can deal with the kind of pressure that kids are under today. Because when you think about it, domestic violence skyrocketed during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Part of the reason was when kids saw things at home, they brought it to their teacher. And the teacher could do a 911 call if they needed to do that. But we need to empower the schools, because the schools, when you think about it, they get our kids more waking hours each day sometimes than families get to spend together. So why not put the support in the schools wherever you possibly can and encourage the families to become the navigators of what next steps look like for their kids, kind of going back to the old school. I mean, for me, growing up and sitting at the dinner table was punitive, because I grew up in a family business and we'd go around the table. My dad would have like a meeting. How was your day? And there's 4 kids growing up, you know, and I'm like, well, I hit the principal again, and I may not be going back to school. So I hated my family dinners, but I was the black sheep. I was the knucklehead. But and when you think about it, though, I replicated that with my children. My wife and I did that as well. And we're the couple that we talk to each other. You know, she says things to me that just, you know, just sometimes when she's in the room breathing, it's annoying. So I just say, look, sometimes I just need my opportunity to take some space. And she's like, okay, you know, and then the kids will call me on stuff and go, Dad, you know, you're out of control. And I said, well, wait a minute, let's have a family meeting about that. And let's find out what's going on. So, you know, we talk like that to each other, and I get a lot of that experience, strength, and hope from my recovery.
So does that happen with your kids? Do they go like, you're right, Dad, Mom does breathe loud?
What the fuck, Eric?
Well, actually, yeah, you know, she chooses.
They do. Yeah,
but you know, but their issues with their mother is different, you know, and mothers and daughters are they have a whole, you know, I'm the bad guy because I'm the guy, you know. It's like, wait a minute, why, how can you all sit there and just agree to lie about something I've done? You know, my youngest always says, well, that's the family plan, Dad. You're going to have to learn to live with it. But we joke about it, and we also know. I mean, my daughter, when she was at U of A, she had people get in trouble, she'd call me, and I'd get on the phone and try to help save a life. And because that's what I do. I'm a hopeless helper, and I want to do more of it. And you know, I really do appreciate the time you guys are taking with me today. And I hope that somebody hears this and says, you know, I don't want to, but I'm going to call that guy. I'm going to put his feet to the fire and see if he answers his phone or calls me back and see what he can do to help me. You know, and I get those kind of calls when they're loaded. Well, yeah, I know. It's like
I
3 in the
know.
morning. Let's talk tomorrow. Wait, it is tomorrow. No, So I put my phone up at night.
Yeah.
So I don't take phone calls.
So what you have a working website, you have Facebook and
Yeah,
and
again, you
anybody can reach you, anybody can reach you anywhere in the United States, but you're in San Diego, right?
Yeah, anywhere in the world. Scott H. Silverman, just Google me. My website is yourcrisiscoach.com. Yourcrisiscoach.com. You can call me 619-993-2738. That's the easiest way, or text me. And or just Google me and send me an email, and we'll figure out a way to figure out a way. I mean, I may not live in your neighborhood, but I'll tell you, I can certainly help you navigate it, no matter where you are on the planet.
Okay.
Unless you're living on an island somewhere. And even then, we'll get you the phone number for the feds. They got the new one out, 988, which is the new crisis hotline. You call that one. And but I have those resources usually at my fingertips. And if I don't, I can tell you where to go online in your community to find them.
Oh, sweet.
Scott,
Sweet.
I stick around after we head out, but thank you so much for doing this, man.
Yes.
Like, thank you for everything that you do. The work that you're doing is so fucking necessary, because there's so many people that just don't. Dude, thank you. And we'd love to have you back, because I know you got some books out, and there's some things that we kind of like couldn't talk about because we delve really deep into like mental health and stuff. But
Oh yeah,
man.
You didn't just blow me off. You did you forgot to bring it up. Okay.
Yeah.
I can do a weekly series with you guys. Well, just as long as we can all wear the same colored clothes, I'll be happy.
Oh God. Well,
yeah, that's true. We do match today.
Very slimming color for me anyway. I don't know what it does for you guys.
Scott, thank you so much for being here, man, and stick around after this, brother.